according to a recent study, which has been conducted over the last 2 decades by Princeton University professor Martin Gilens and Northwestern University professor Benjamin Page, America is not a democracy, but in fact we are ruled by an oligarchy being a government ruled by a small group of powerful elite individuals. The study concludes that multivariate analysis indicates that economic elites and organized groups representing business interests have substantial independent impacts on U.S. government policy. Obviously, while average citizens and even mass-based interest groups have little to no independent influence. Simply put, the wealthiest few get to make all the policies and laws in this country, while the average American people have absolutely no control over government policies whatsoever, comparatively. The study states that, quote, when a majority of citizens disagrees with economic elites or with organized interests, they generally lose. Moreover, because of the strong status quo built into the U.S. political system, even when fairly large majorities of Americans favor policy change, they generally do not get it. The professors of the study conclude that although Americans enjoy many features central to a democratic governance, we believe that if the policy making is dominated by the powerful business organizations and a small number of affluent Americans, then America's claim to being a democratic society are seriously threatened. What do you guys think, and what's your response to this new study?
Well, for me, I mean, in a number of kind of different articles, people are saying this is a duh report. This is just obvious, and now we've just got kind of academic facts to back up the claim that America's democracy has been completely sold out. You're talking about how even if there's a kind of a large percentage of the population who are in favour of a certain policy, it's still probably not going to get passed. And of course, a brilliant example of that is a gun control bill. A number of people, something like 70, 80% plus, who are in favour of at least background checks, but of course didn't pass because of the moneyed interest, because of the NRA, because of the gun lobby. They were able to kind of quash any bills like that, and they basically just turned to the politicians and said, look, if you don't vote against this bill, we're going to pull our money away. And it's almost depressing in a way. Now, I'm not necessarily against oligarchies in principle, because if you had, because essentially an oligarchy is just a small elite group of people who are running a country rather than the rest. If it was a small elite group of scientists or something like that, I'd maybe be a bit more favourable towards it, because I have a bit more faith in scientists than I do in politicians. And if you had a meritocracy combined with an oligarchy, maybe I could be argued into favouring that. But at the moment, it's just moneyed interest, and it's the rich elite who are at this top tier who are making these policy decisions, and it's just rather depressing, really.
Yeah, I think one thing that makes this, yeah, sure, it's the duh report. Oh, politicians are crooked and money corrupts. Duh. Yeah, okay, of course. But what's important about this? Why this study, I think, does have the ability to make a difference, is because this takes, this takes principles that everybody knows are true. We all know that there's corruption in politics, and this shows, with hard data, with evidence, that we've hit critical mass. Like, we have gone past the point of the flaws that are inherent in the system to the point of the system is being abused right now in a way that can be corrected, and we can quantify that and measure it. And that's very important, because that's the kind of thing that should remind us that it is bad to be so cynical and jaded. You don't want to be naive and think that there's a politician out there who actually cares about you, but you do at the same time. You don't want to be so cynical that you remove yourself from the process and don't become involved in the nation's politics. And this study reminds us, like, hey, just because there is a level of corruption built into any system of power, and democracy is the same. What's the quote? Democracy is the worst government in the world, other than all the other ones. And that's true. Like any system of power is there to be abused, And in democracy, you by definition have an oppressed minority because somebody's got to win the vote and somebody's got to lose the vote. There's serious flaws to anything, but that's the world we live in. And this study shows us that, like, once you can start quantifying it and show, like, you have data points to back up that point, then it becomes not this airy-fairy, kind of detached thing, but an actual problem that can be addressed. And that's why this study is important and why it should be taken seriously.
Mm-hmm. So, of course, my reaction to this whole thing is that's what we've been saying on the show for over a year, right? Since we started this, about a year ago, we've noticed that, yeah, of course, the elites, the people with money, the moneyed interests, have a lot more control or say. But this story is important because, as you said, Jordan, this quantifies it. And one of the things that's really kind of striking from the study, because I went and read through it, and I picked up a couple of the things that really kind of struck me, is that it said the preferences of the average American appear to have only a minuscule, near zero, statistically non-significant impact upon public policy. And it's just like what Stephen had alluded to, because you can see this reflected in some of the legislation that we've passed or have been unable to pass. For example, we had the bank bailouts, right? Everybody in their right mind is against that bank bailout, except for the bankers, who have all the control of the political system, and that's why they got billions and billions of dollars, trillions of dollars in, backdoor bailouts and direct loans and everything like that from the taxpayer for doing their shitty game that they made billions of dollars off of. So, and another good example is once again, background checks for guns, living wage. The fact that we haven't had a decent minimum wage raise in a long time, and the fact that even when we did have one, it was far from being a livable wage. And all these things that Americans are in favor of, except for the bank bailouts, they're massively against those. The government always seems to go to the opposite of what the people want, unless, of course, in the study where it did point out that it says the only times it's not that the people lose all the time, but when they do win, it's because there are elites that actually also want that. And so we see that reflected in things like food stamps, and you might even actually start to see that with gun control now that you have Bloomberg throwing money into gun control. So we're seeing money versus money. And that's a good example of people that might get things their way because a wealthy billionaire decides to throw his money into the ring. It's really kind of sad for democracy.
I mean, in essence, this study provides statistical hard numbers showing that there is a small minority of people within the country who get to, or they effectively decide what policy is passed and what policy isn't. And just a couple of weeks ago, you had the McCutcheon ruling in the Supreme Court, and one of the things from it was saying there's not even the appearance of corruption, of allowing money in politics. And this study just highlights that is a ludicrous thing to even suggest in America's current political system. This study shows that there is rich individuals who are having a greater impact on what policies are passed, and for some reason, those 5 justices in the Supreme Court think, no, can't see it, don't want to see it, completely ignoring it. It's just ridiculous having that McCutcheon decision and then just having this study come out so close to each other. And of course, the McCutcheon decision received a whole ton of news, and I bet you anything, this study, it may be picked up on 1 or 2 kind of news hours on maybe MSNBC or CNN, but Fox News isn't going to talk about it, and pretty much no one else is either.
Or they'll probably spin it into, hey, it's a good thing. That means the job creators are in control. You know how Fox News loves to spin that. But another point that I want to add into that is it's not just policy that the people with the money, the elites, the moneyed interests, special interest groups, which also hold a very large sway here in America. But they don't just drive policy, but they also drive the media narrative. And I think that is also something really important, because you also can't have a good policy debate or a policy agenda set set if you don't have that media. Media drives so many different narratives. That's why you saw Washington continuously pivot away from the message of income inequality, especially during the first few years of the Obama administration, and the lack of jobs, and still the lack of jobs, to a talk about deficit reduction, because that kind of stuff, that's what the elites, that's what the special interests were interested in. Oh, we've got this massive debt that we have to take care of, because they have some sort of financial dog in that fight. So they want to make sure the debt is number one. So they drive that media narrative.
Yeah, well, and I don't know if this is to agree with you guys or push back, but I do want to point out, like to the gun control example you guys talked about, where the overwhelming majority of people are for background checks, and you can't pass it. I don't think that this is an example of what I'm about to illustrate, but sometimes part of what our system is supposed to do, why we have a representative democracy, or we have a democratic republic rather than being a true democracy, is that we do elect people that we think are smarter than us to go and make these decisions. And a great example of that, yeah, not from my state. Not that my state has great examples either. But a great example of this is somewhat from my state, and the reason why Bill Clinton will never be more than a good president, why he'll never be considered a great president in my eyes, is because Glass-Steagall was repealed under Bill Clinton, and there was no objection from any, it was overwhelmingly popular, nobody cared about it, and so there was no chance of putting up a fight against it. Everybody was on board with it, and we did it, and it was one reason why the 2008 collapse happened. Sometimes it is the job in a republic for our representatives to not necessarily, that's the job of the president, then, I should say, to use the bully pulpit and try to sway the American people. And then if you can't,
that's sort of a bad example, Jordan, because guess who that policy helped? Not just in the long term, right? In the short term, that really helped the investment bankers.
That's totally true, yeah.
Helps the bank. So that's not exactly the greatest example, because
and that's why I said I don't know if I'm pushing back or agreeing. My point was just that just because politicians don't vote in favor with the majority every single time isn't always a bad thing.
Yeah, that's I think a better example would be if, let's say, 80% of the population they all in polling and stuff, they said we're completely against the enforcement of wearing seatbelts. We think it's a ridiculous idea, for reasons X, Y, and Z. Then you do need politicians to kind of step in and say, look, it doesn't matter if it's popular and you all want it. We know better than you in this instance.
But once again, that's sort of a bad example, because guess who was against seatbelts? The car companies. Once again, you had the people with the power and the money, the elite, making the policy or trying to make the policy. Now, luckily, we did win on the seatbelt issue. But still,
I think you're missing the point. We're not trying to we're just pointing out the idea the principle that the people are always right 100% of the time, and it's immediately bad whenever the government doesn't reflect that as an issue. I think as soon as you involve money, then that principle does apply.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think a good example would actually be suffrage, considering that at the time it wasn't a popular issue and they barely got it passed, meaning women's right to vote. It took the President Woodrow Wilson, who begrudgingly, after much pushing and shoving of the feminists behind that movement, actually made an address to Congress urging them to give women the right to vote. So even though the majority of Americans didn't want it, because the majority of voting Americans were men and they were against it, women still got the right to vote because the president and other lawmakers used their authority to override what they thought the popular majority wanted.